Please be seated. Number 3 on the agenda is declaration of interest or general nature thereof. Does anybody have an interest to declare? I see no hands. I'm going to add a 3.1, which is chair's remarks, as I'd like to clarify details mentioned in last week's council meeting to right an error that I made. So it was pointed out to me that the number I quoted when I was talking about the reserve funds that we had amassed since 2018, I had used a figure from 3.9 to 9.5, and that was incorrect. What I had done is I had quoted a 2017 discretionary capital fund reserve, which was not the total discretionary funds. So to correct that, it should have been the 2018 number, which was 5.8 million, and we're now up to 9.2, and that's not including the reserve funds for the library, and that brings us up to 9.5. So my sincere apologies to the public for making that error. However, we continue to move forward with building our reserves to meet our asset management plan, and I know that we're well on our way. And just to reiterate that we are less dependent on the casino funds, which had largely funded our reserves in previous years. And we've rectified that such that we would not be dependent on that solely, again, to fund our reserves, which is very important as going through COVID, realizing that that funding could be gone. So I appreciate the clarification or the question as far as clarifying the error, and my sincere apologies to the public for making that error. So moving forward with in-camera, number 4 on the agenda, and there is no in-camera session tonight. Number 5 is the consent agenda, and I'll ask for a motion for adoption and receipt of minutes. So the first motion is moved by Councillor Gorell, seconded by Councillor Olkey, that the April 12th, 2022 and May 2nd, 2022 public meeting minutes be adopted as circulated. That the April 12th, 2022 council meeting minutes and May 2nd, 2022 committee of the whole meeting minutes be adopted as circulated. And that the March 29th, 2022 and April 12th, 2022 Committee of Adjustment meeting minutes be received and filed. Any questions, comments? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. I believe the April 12th, the Committee of Adjustment attendees listed are not who was, because it was the council and not the Committee of Adjustment.
Madam Clerk, do you?
Yes, through you. I have been made aware of that error, and I will be making those changes after the meeting. Thank you.
So that's noted. Any other errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed, and we're carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Moved by Councillor Olkey, seconded by Councillor Gorell, that the council approve the staff reports as recommended at the May 2nd, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting. So there is a number of staff reports. Are there any comments or questions in regards to those staff reports? So there needs to be one, sorry, go ahead. I'll let you speak and then I'll speak to the other item. Go ahead.
Would just lay out through you, your worship, operations report for the design of the Ivy Lee Wharf. Just a brief discussion on that, please.
I'll allow it, just because I'm not going to pull it and then approve everything else and then go back. So
We can pull it or not. It's a brief.
just as brief, perfect. Then go ahead and ask your question and then we'll go forward with the amendment.
Thank you. And through you, your worship. To date, to the director of operations, we had a very broad brush engineering report. And could you just tell me one more time the next steps involved in that? And how far are we down in the actual engineering design of the wharf? Thank you.
Thank you. Through your worship. So there are 3 stages to the construction of something like this. There's the preliminary design, which we have just completed. They gave us the alternative layouts that we could move forward with. The next stages are the detailed design, which we will move into now. That's getting right into it. We're looking at the bearing capacity of the rock and what we need to support the wharf, the thickness of the slabs, how many piles, all those types of things. Every detail and quantity and all those types of things, the specifications. And then after that, it's tender preparation into construction.
And then just one last question. So when we put that out, the RFQ for the engineering, shall we say, there's room for one engineering firm or they might be differing. Is that correct? Or are we being very prescriptive in what we ask from them in the RFQ? That's really my question. How prescriptive are we being? Are we saying it must be this way? Or is there room for them to come back to us and say, listen, we can do it this way and so on?
Through your worship. So we are prescriptive in terms of what we're looking for at the end of the day.
Right.
We want to have a certain layout. We want to have capacities that we can adhere to. We want to be able to load heavy equipment on, but the engineers, they're the ones that provide us the information to tell us, we recommend that you go with an 8-inch slab as an example, and that you, similar to the casings, that we go with the wood cribs with the full of rock, those types of things. They give us those recommendations. That's why we went through the RFP process to engage the consultants, because they are the professionals when it comes to designing this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions in regards to staff reports? Go ahead, Councillor Jameson.
I'm not sure if this is the place for it, but through your worship, the question about, I'm getting a lot of inquiries about the private roads. And what it really is coming down to when I look at it is the shock of the new. Now we are suddenly approaching this from a lot more scientific approach to how it should be done. So all I think we need to do is make sure we clarify as we go. I live on a lane where people are saying, well, wait a minute, this is all different. And it is, but it isn't. So at the end of the day, I think it's going to be the fact sheet about what it means as opposed to the long report that is sitting there. So I just offer that, please.
I'm actually going to ask for an amendment to the motion to defer the private road grant until June. And I'll give you an explanation as to why. We received some feedback from residents in regards to the private road grant. And after a brief discussion with the director, it became clear that this was viewed only as capital work, that we would not be supporting winter maintenance whatsoever. And after a brief discussion with the director, both of us see where people are looking at this, that basically everybody will abandon, winter maintenance will be willy-nilly and that capital work will be the only focus. And we actually need to strike a balance between the two. So the director took that feedback from the residents, there was a couple of different people who'd given feedback and said, we can maybe do better on this and lay it out a little differently. So he'd like an opportunity to bring that back to council in June with something that looks a little slightly different, that's more balanced between maintenance as well as capital. Go ahead.
Can I respond to that by saying I completely understand that this is absolutely the right thing to do at this time. Based on the feedback I'm getting, absolutely the right thing to do at this time. So let's get it right and everybody will understand, I'm sure.
So Councillor Jameson will make that amendment to the motion.
I will.
That staff reports be approved. The staff reports recommended May 2nd, save 7.3 SR-051-22 to be deferred until the June 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting. Okay, so Mr. Jameson is making that amendment and I need a seconder for the amendment, Councillor Foti. Okay, and so we'll vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment, sorry. All those opposed, and that is carried. So the new motion reads, moved by Councillor Oakley, seconded by Councillor Grell, that council approve the staff reports as recommended at the May 2nd, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting, save 7.3 SR-051-22 to be deferred until June 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting. Any further discussion on the motion as presented? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Thank you. Okay. So next item on the agenda, number 8, information items, moved by Councillor Grell, seconded by Councillor Oakley, that the information item be received and filed. And this is specific to the municipal school board elections planning timeline. Are there any comments or questions in regards to the information brought forward? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business? I see no hands up. I will move forward to number 7, which is action items. And the motion comes forward from Councillor Oakley, seconded by Councillor Grell, that council approve the application for alteration to a designated heritage property for the property located at 1084 Prince Street, Lansdowne, to permit the alterations to the structure as set out by the application, consisting of preparation and repainting of the north and south elevations, together with an area around the rear entrance to the building, including removal of all paint, priming and new paint in the same color as the existing, and repair of water damage and existing cracks in the clapboard. And that council approve the application for the Heritage Celebration Grant received for 1084 Prince Street, Lansdowne, for the preparation of and painting of distressed wood siding for up to $2,500. Discussion on this motion. We do have Ms. Venditti on the line, and if you wish to have any questions answered. So go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. The one thing that I looked at when I seen the pictures are these older pictures of this particular building, because I know we passed on putting the back door on this particular structure, and it didn't look like it was there in the picture. Just because that was like a half a year ago or more, maybe even a year ago at this point. So just questioning on the validity of the pictures, and if there's improvements that have already been made, it'd be nice if they were actually shown in the picture.
Ms. Venditti.
Through you, I believe that these are older pictures and that the work has probably been done at this point, which is why they are doing additional repairs at the back of the building right now. So we can look at that for future applications.
Okay, thank you for asking the question. Any other comments or questions in regards to the application? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Next item is operations report SR-071-22, moved by Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Foti, that the council directs staff to engage the Greer Galloway Group for the detailed design permits and tender preparation of the Kidd Road North Bridge replacement. Discussion on this motion. Any questions for the director? After the photo I saw of a bridge that fell apart today, I think it's pretty important that we do this and do it right. So go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. I noticed that the TSI group was part of the investigation of this, but when the budgeting number came in, they may have been the highest one. I was kind of curious on that particular dilemma because there was a cheaper 2 other bids that were less expensive.
Go ahead.
Thank you, through your worship. I was quite surprised by the costing as well. And I did speak with the engineer from TSI and they said that they may have mispriced that one. And they look to being more competitive next time. So that's why we have a procurement policy. We don't just go to one vendor, I suppose, right?
Absolutely.
But they checked all of the boxes. All three engineers were providing all of the requirements that we're looking for designing this structure.
Okay, any further questions for the director? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Next item, 7.3 Operations Report SR-072-22, moved by Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that the council award tender OPS-2022-010. I got it right. Okay. Supply and delivery of granular material to G. Tackberry and Sons Construction Company Limited for 3-year term ending May 15th, 2025. Any discussion on the motion? Go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. Just for the public's information, we did change the granular mix that on this particular grant application or road application. We have some bigger stone, and I understand it's for embankment improvements or stabilization and things like that. So just another clarification on that.
Yep. Thank you, through your worship. So we included, we have granular A in this one instead of granular M. It's basically the same stone. It's really close to one another. We included an actual granular B. Previously, it had been a 2-inch minus stone, which if you look at the MTO specifications, there is no 2-inch minus. So we're actually going with the 3-inch minus that's spec'd by MTO, so that if we do have issues, at least we have that standard to fall back on. We've included clear stone. A lot of the culvert work that we do is in water. So this allows us to gain that compaction with the culverts that we will not get with a granular A or a granular M because we can't compact it. And then the Gabion stone is something that we're doing as end treatment around the end of the pipes to mitigate any scouring that's happening. It's becoming the standard. A lot of municipalities are doing that, and the Conservation Authority likes it because it keeps from all of the sediment going down through the pipes and eroding the base.
Okay, any further questions in regards to OPS 2022-1010? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Next item, 7.4 Administration Report SR-032-22 Procedural Bylaw Update Follow-Up, moved by Councillor Fody, moved by Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Fody, that the council grant 3 readings and final passage to bylaw number 22-001, being a bylaw to govern and regulate the proceedings of council, conduct of its members, and the calling of the meetings. Discussion on this motion. Go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to the CAO. I know that we had put some questions forth at the last meeting on this particular one. Just wondering if there's any update on those particular questions and how it pertains to the.
Did you want the
written.
CAO to answer that or the clerk? The clerk? The clerk was the one who, it's all right. It's all right. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, through you. So in terms of the procedural bylaw, I know there's discussion on electronic meetings. And then I know redlined in the bylaw, I did remove the notice to provide myself for electronic meetings. But if there are any other changes or additions that council would like to see in the procedural bylaw, we can discuss that as well.
Were there any other errors or omissions or changes that were desired when reading the policy? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. There was one, and that was particularly in 5.04, which is the alphabetical order. And I know that there was, we did have a little discussion about having the potential of having a brand new member to council having to chair the meeting, which isn't really a large thing with the clerk's assistant. They can do it, but I'm just, and that was my question at the time also, that going by seniority instead of alphabetically. And again, is there a set policy within the provincial bylaws for that type of thing.
I think the procedural bylaw says alphabetical at this point, so.
Thank you through you. Just for clarification, it does to have, alphabetical order. Yes.
So unless there's a proposed change, that's the way the procedure bylaw is written. Any errors, omissions, changes, discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And it's carried. Okay, next is 7.5. Administration Report SR-060-22, Proposed Election Sign Bylaw. Motion comes forward from Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that the council grant 3 readings, final passage to bylaw number 22-030, being a bylaw to regulate municipal election signs in the Township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands. Council, the suggestions that were made last week were updated on the policy. Is there any questions or concerns with the way it's written now? Go ahead, Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And through you, the only thing that I seen that potentially could be an improvement is that there's 7 days to take down signs instead of just 4. In the event that the election is on a Monday night or a Monday, 4 days does not allow you to get to a weekend to take the signs down. And if you work during the day, it could be difficult to get them, or inclement weather for 2 of those days. I just feel that it should be a seven-day window instead of a 4-day window.
Council, is there anybody who wants to weigh in on that? Councillor Jameson.
Could be our last ditch effort to just drop the whole sign thing altogether. My last shot, Your Worship. Thank you.
I think that municipal or provincial election allows for however many days. And I do appreciate that people work and that it makes it somewhat difficult, but I guess it depends on how many signs you put up, right, Councillor Jameson? So depending on how many signs you have to collect, it could be a daunting task or not. So the policy is presented as it's presented unless there's an amendment made or will from council to change it. So I'm not seeing anybody. Go ahead, Councillor Wilkie.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, I do think that Councillor Maybe's recommendation is reasonable. And there are people around the table, believe it or not, who do work for a living.
Absolutely.
And I'm hearing a number of things from constituents about this. And some people don't want any signs. Some people wonder when the signs are going up. And some people say they just don't care. It's up to us as candidates what we do. And if we have a bylaw that says we don't put them on township property, we obey that. And then there's other guidelines for other areas.
Mhm.
So maybe this is just a whole big bridge too far and no posting signs on bridges. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Got it. So if there is the will to change it, there needs to be an amendment to this motion to change that section. Okay, maybe Gorell. What is the item number, Councillor? Maybe 5.04, did you say? .0.0, or sorry, I don't have the, oh no, I needed the identifier in the actual policy. You got it. Madam Clerk has it.
Yeah, thank you through you. So it is section 6, paragraph B.
So section 6, paragraph B, to change the current is 96 hours. So 96 hours to 7 days. Okay. So the amendment reads section 6, paragraph B to change from 96 hours to 7 days. And the motion, or sorry, the amendments made by Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Gorell. Any discussion on the amendment? Go ahead.
Is that 7 business days? I mean, that's
No, 7
Pro
days.
forma.
7 days.
7 days.
Because it's to include a weekend. And if the If the election's on a Monday, that would include the following weekend.
Okay.
That's all it is. Thank you for the clarity, though. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Fody. The thing is, the policy follows whatever that is. So if we put a date in it, we'd have to change it annually. So any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed, and it's carried. Okay, so the amended motion reads that council grant 3 readings and final passage to bylaw number 22-030, being a bylaw to regulate municipal election signs in the township of Leeds and the Thousand Islands, except section 6, paragraph 13, to change from 96 hours to 7 days. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? We're carried. Now we're on to 7.6, Community and Business Services Report, SR-067-22-2022, Community Grant Program, Spring Intake. And the motion comes forward from Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Fody. The council approved the distribution of community grants in the amount of $73,862 for the 2022 spring intake of the program. So council, you have the list of grantees that are proposed to receive. Is there any questions, comments, queries in regards to it? Go ahead, Councillor Jameson.
Appreciate all the hard work staff put into this. Based on the matrix, very worthy. I just want to mention that the commitment that we may be making to extending financing for the BERM program that will provide the bus into Lansdowne to go, I guess, to Gann or maybe to Brockville, or in other words, along the corridor, is an excellent idea. I know over these last 3 years attending the municipal drug strategy meetings, watching the police force in Gann develop that program from zero and bringing it to the report we got last week, which they reduced their calls to youth challenges in that park by 85%. And it works. And so I am hoping that, notwithstanding the challenges everywhere, that one of the discussions we did have was trying to bring Rideau Lakes and our township and Gann together in some discussion with our parks people and our library people about the northern area, particularly the catchment area that serves Rideau Lakes High School. So while this is irrelevant to this discussion, I would like to encourage, perhaps through a notice of motion, for our people to talk to the people around about how we can bring some similar strategies to the north in the near future, because we are facing down some pretty big challenges with respect to use and misuse in the north too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments in the grant recipients and the money going forward for that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Congratulations to all the grant recipients. Well deserved. And it is nice to see that kind of money going back out into the community, supporting well-deserving individuals and groups. Moving forward to 7.7, Community and Business Services Report, SR-073-22, 2022 Youth Bursary Awards. So the motion comes forward from Councillor Jameson, seconded by Councillor Maybe, that the council approve the Youth Bursary Awards to Austin Petro in the amount of $500, Roma Walker in the amount of $300, and Alexander Meeks in the amount of $200. Discussion on this motion. Go ahead, Councillor.
Councillor maybe is pointing at me, Your Worship. It's just such a privilege to see these young people and what they're doing over and above incredible scholastic achievements, which I can only imagine. The effort they make in their communities. We think we have challenges with volunteering, and we do, but there's clearly the seeds have been planted through family and through churches and through Lions organizations and so on for these young people to step up. And we hope that if we can keep them in the community somehow, they'll be the next generation that kind of takes over. So it was a great privilege, and I'm sure Brian agrees with me. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Just echoing that comment, it's always wonderful for us to do a small thing. It may not be small to the recipients, but in the grand schemes of our budget, it's a small amount, but definitely well worth it to support the engaged youth of the community. So any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Next, 7.8, Councillor Gorell came forward with Rockport sorry, I'm having a hard time tonight. Rockport boat ramp barrier. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Jameson, that the staff be directed to consult with the residents of Rockport regarding the placement of a barrier for safety of residents and to support the Rockport boat ramp, and that council report to council, then that staff report to council in due course. So discussion on this motion, our director, did you want to speak to this in general terms, and then we'll go to Councillor Gorell?
Amendment.
Oh, you have an amendment? Sorry. Before you speak, there's an amendment coming forward.
I'd just like to strike the word and replace it. It says consult with the residents. This is more consulting with the commercial interests.
Consult with the commercial businesses.
Yep. Because we've had discussion through a wholesome discussion 2 years ago, pre-pandemic. This whole item is just coming forward because we're coming out of a pandemic. Let's start some action on those items. Thank you.
And so the amendment is to change the word residents with commercial businesses of Rockport. But I would also say that another amendment should be the safety of residents, should be the safety of pedestrians.
Correct.
And so pedestrians, second residents in that clause should be pedestrians. And to support the Rockport boat ramp. Would that be fair? Pedestrians and vehicular traffic?
Yeah.
Vehicular traffic. Sorry, I have to sound it out. It's called phonetics. So the amendment that's come forward from Councillor Gorell is to change in the first sentence, consult with the residents, strike residents and replace with commercial businesses. And then the second, safety of residents, change to pedestrians and vehicular traffic. And do I have a seconder on that amendment? Councillor Jameson. Okay. Discussion on the amendment. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed? And that is carried. So the new motion reads that staff be directed to consult with the commercial businesses of Rockport regarding the placing of a barrier for safety of pedestrians and vehicular traffic and to support the Rockport boat ramp, and that staff report to council in due course. Okay, so the amended motion is on the table. Director, go ahead.
Thank you. So in light of the notice of motion that was brought to council, I met with the boat line last week, and we had a discussion about some of the challenges at that area. There's a lot going on in a really small area. We have pedestrians crossing the road. We have boats using the boat launch. We have buses coming in for boat tours, and we have people that are queuing to go on the boat ride themselves, both in and out at either end of the building. So we met on site and discussed an opportunity to put some temporary measures in place, delineating our property from the boat line property, which I think will serve as, identifying what is boat launch parking and queuing versus where the boat line will park. And it also addresses the mass flow of pedestrians that are crossing the road by identifying where they should be crossing the road at the proper locations. So the idea is to put some sort of barrier in place along the property line, the south property line of the boat line parking lot, But we're going to leave an end open on either side of that for the pedestrians that are crossing. There's an island with a sign at the southwest corner. The idea is to have the pedestrian crossing on the direct east side of that island for queuing to go onto the boat. The boat line does put up a barrier to help assist with queuing the patrons along the edge of the road allowance on the south side, which will help with the boat line or the boat launch turning movements. And then there has been some parking in the right of way that we're going to eliminate as queuing for the boat launch, but still try to allow parking to the east side of the property line if possible for on-street parking. I'm not sure if it'll work yet, but that'll be a in situ decision that's made. And then an additional gap on the east side for the patrons that are coming off the boat and back over to the buses. So that will address the issue, I think, with the conflict between the boat launch users and then the property owners of the boat line. In addition, we looked at the boat launch itself. And in order to access the boat launch currently, we have to encroach on the boat line property. The property bar is about halfway into the ramp that we use for people loading and unloading their boats. And the boat line is willing to work with us on this. They've asked that we identify the property line, but keep it back a bit further closer to the water, further away from the road to allow the turning movements. It's just identifying where the property is, where the patrons will be standing before they go into the boat. So we're going to work on that. Long term, I think we need to look at the location of the cenotaph. It's our property is likely only 10 feet wide where the access to the boat launch is, and a large chunk of that is taken up by the cenotaph. So maybe relocating it to the customs house or some other location where we can have our ceremonies and still have access to the boat launch at the same time. Anyway, that's food for thought longer term. Just wanted to share that thought with you guys right now. And that's what we're looking at.
So to paraphrase all of that is to say that the work that was done with Marnie and Vendidi's group way back when it came to the Rockport master plan and the consultation that happened, there was a number of recommendations that came out of it. And Councillor Gorell had suggested that perhaps we try to start putting some of those things into place as far as moving people. And I know that there's a long-term strategy, and that would, that's talking about curbing and delineating roads and that sort of thing. And paint is fairly cheap if we want to start identifying where people need to go, as well as some barriers, and try to help move traffic better as well as pedestrians. But so it was very much a good idea, because really this is about safety for both pedestrians and the boating traffic. The ramp being replaced is one piece of it, but the cenotaph where it's placed, certainly we don't want to disturb or not have the cenotaph. That's certainly not anybody's intention, but if we could relocate it to as good in an area that would not be potentially backed into by a truck and a trailer, because it is right on the corner there where the boat launch is. But Councillor Gorell had brought that up, and the director's already started the wheels in motion. And I think that was a good meeting that we had with Rockport. So, and Councillor Gorell is studying furiously a map, I think, of Rockport. Nope.
Just for clarification to through you, Your Worship, you mentioned that there was a pin in the middle of the driveway or the access to the boat ramp. That pin, on a survey from this township granted to me some years ago, that pin is actually not the property line. It's just a pin that indicates that the southern boundary of the roadway follows from the two telephone poles on the south of the road and comes right through to the cenotaph. It does not connect in any way, shape, or form to the property lines, as our township survey demonstrates. There are 3 or 4 pins that are there that now probably got buried with the new road or the new access. But I would take issue with that, and maybe we'll just discuss that privately as to where those pins are and where the property lines are.
I would appreciate that.
Thank you.
Perfect. So go ahead, Councilor Maybe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. On regards to moving the cenotaph, and I know that that has become an issue in other locales when things want to get moved of that importance. But moving it to the customs dock would actually give more of a venue for people to actually celebrate the reason for it. And Councillor Olkey, I look forward to your input, perhaps on a cenotaph being moved, or what it would take, and as well as the residents that placed it there or the meaning of it there for them. It's a very sensitive piece of history, which we must maintain, but I do like the customs dock area for that.
Sorry, we had a participant with a dog that
Yep.
agreed.
Okay.
So-
Well, hey,
But that had already, yes, that very much had been discussed, that we wouldn't be doing anything without consultation with anybody. So go ahead, Councillor Olkey.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I could respond to Councillor Maybe's prompt. Cenotaphs, especially if they bear the names of local veterans, especially those who didn't return, have kind of religious significance for people. One of the things about municipal cenotaphs in days gone by was that they would be placed in an area where there could be a parade march past. Soldiers in uniform are expected to salute a cenotaph, believe it or not. The National Cenotaph is guarded, and it is a war grave. A cenotaph in a village like Lyndhurst, wherever else, represents a war grave. So this maybe is passing out of our culture in terms of general knowledge, but that's why they were set up and the way they were set up. In other countries, Australian Returned Servicemen's League in many villages like Lyndhurst or Rockport donated swimming baths, what they call swimming baths, are essentially a public pool. And that was their cenotaph, that was their monument. In Canada, we went for something was like a grave marker or a monument you might see in a Victorian cemetery. So there may be some sensitivities to moving it at all. And look at the area if you decide to move a cenotaph. Make sure there's a significant area around it for people to gather, whether they're military troops in formation or just, loyal citizens who want to express that.
That's a great suggestion.
Thank you.
Like I said, the preliminary discussion with the director was that we would speak to the local Legion. We would speak to a number of individuals who would have a specific interest. If you go by the cenotaph, it is in need of some TLC, some of the, not purging, mortar work. Thank you. I was blanking. Mortar work needs to be some updates and stuff, and where it's placed right now, it's kind of in the middle of the village, and we stand in the middle of the road to gather. So it wouldn't, I would think that wherever it would be placed would be in that general area anyways, so it wouldn't move too far, but just that it would have more a place of prominence, and then maybe we could make it even better than what it is right now to honor those who have fallen. So any further comments or questions on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? And we're carried. Thank you, Director. Okay, next on the agenda is the mayor's update. I'll try to be brief. Just a reminder, the Touch a Truck event is May 17th. And I am very happy to see the number of shares, both from our page and even my own mayor's page, where people are very interested in this event and bringing their children and their grandkids and their neighbors' kids and whoever might want to climb up on a fire truck, a plow truck, a grader, what have you. So I know that the public works staff is working hard to shine everything up and show all of our big machines, because one of the things growing up on a farm, you forget that lots of kids have never been able to climb up on a tractor or a hay bine or whatever, had to sweat it out in Haymow for matters or a bale wagon. But having that opportunity, we are having a charity barbecue that evening, proceeds going to the rear of Leeds and Lansdowne Food Bank. So very worthy cause. So we hope council is able to come out, as well as individuals that would like to see, even if you're not a kid, but you're a kid at heart, you can come and see all of our fleet as it's on display. I just wanted to say thank you again to all of the residents and groups who organized to clean up different spots within our township, and even just the residents who decided to take it upon themselves to clean up the roadways near their homes. As I said before, I'm still very staggered at the amount of garbage that has landed in our ditches and dead end roads. And right to the point that my sister was coming to visit on the weekend and saw somebody from the 401 dumping on the Rockport Escott Road from the 401. So anyways, disappointing from that point of view, but grateful that there are those who take great pride in their community and give their time and energy to cleaning things up. Another thank you to a specific individual who was pointed out to me. There's a gentleman by the name of David Pritchard out in Sealy's Bay, and he is a resident on the main street. And every day he goes over to the park and he picks up twigs and sticks and keeps the park tidy. And for someone to do that, not asked to do that, and who's taken it upon themselves to show pride in their community, again, I thank them, as I'm sure the council thanks them. And I know that our township staff, who don't have to pick up those sticks and whatever else debris might be around, thanks him as well. So thank you to that gentleman. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting him, but I did get a note. Lastly, unfortunately, there was a significant fire on an island that was on the US side on the weekend. It was called Murray Island, and there was, I believe, 2 cottages that caught fire over on Murray Island, and we were called to assist. And I'm very pleased to say that we had 2 boats who responded with our volunteer firefighters to help. I believe there was a number of cottages on that island that were potentially not saved, but prevented from catching fire. And unfortunately, the cottages that caught fire, I believe, were kind of quintessential classic old cottages that had stood the test of time. There was one couple who lived there already, and they were able to escape with their dog, and they are safe and sound. Unfortunately, the cottage is not in any livable shape. But when we often get asked about what people receive for tax dollars when they're island residents or seasonal residents, and this is a perfect example, is that even though that was on the US side, that could easily happen on our side just as easily as it happens on the US side. And when we have the network that we do, and I know that in the event that it was Canadian Island that had something tragic like that happen, we could call them and they would be there for us. So I'm very proud of our volunteer firefighters and our service who were there when the call came in. And I'm just glad that everybody is safe. But it is a great reminder that perhaps to those who live on islands, we do take a lot of effort to make sure that we are at the ready in the event that somebody needs us. The fireboat's in at Ivy Lee and remains in there. I believe there's one in Rockport, not yet. Right, we have other mobile units, but there is one at Ivy Lee automatically, and we're able to respond because we do have a number of lakes as well as the river to respond to. So that's an important thing to remember, and just grateful for those who volunteer their time to answer those calls. Is there anything else, gentlemen, that I've forgotten to mention? Okay. We will go forward with notices of motion. Any notices of motion? Go ahead, Councillor Jameson.
Alluded to this earlier, and I'm just notice a motion that I'm planning to bring a notice of motion respecting programs, specifically to try to ID common cause among the areas in the north, our Ward 2 specifically, but also southern portion of Rideau Lakes and Athens, with respect to our parks programs, libraries, and other programs that may be available through the Y. It was a discussion we had. We also, this week with the municipal drug strategy, and the mayor of Rideau Lakes was involved, but also I'm on the North Leeds Youth Coordinating Committee, if I could say it. I attend the meetings, doesn't mean I can say it, Your Worship, but it is also a place where I've learned a lot about some of the collective challenges. We have one school up there that services it all. So the notice of motion is really going to be asking our staff, and so directing is not my style, but to ask the staff, our staff, the staff of to approach Rideau Lakes and Athens to discuss where we can partner on some of these programs, including some of the bus rides that may take some of these children, young people, to places where they are less at risk, or other programs that have been identified, like the BURN program, as being acceptable. So that's a very convoluted way of saying, I just like people to get together and think about the kids up there, is really what I'm asking. So I'm going to bring that in next month. Thank you, Your Worship.
Any other notices of motion? Go ahead, Councillor Oki.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have two potential ones. The first one, since we seem to be so successful with building reserves, and I think I alluded to it last meeting, we have a lot of money sitting in one place. Perhaps we should investigate what instrument it should be kept in for the benefit of the township.
Okay.
If we could generate funds from there that could be used for special purposes, or just to pad the reserves further against things that happen. There's restrictions on what we can invest in, but I don't think we're investing anything now, specifically beyond bank accounts. So
I think that the director mentioned last week that there was a financial plan coming forward, which would include investment strategy, but I'm sure that if you have a moment to speak with the director of finance, that she'll be able to tell you. And if you wish to bring forward a notice of motion, she would be able to help you set that up too.
all right.
Okay.
The next one is, I think, from what I'm hearing, between Sealy's Bay, Lyndhurst, and Points Beyond, there needs to be some clarification on this events bylaw we brought in. The specific thing is a $500 license, and we may need to have a notice. We may need to move an amendment to that bylaw.
So you're in regards to the special events policy. So I'll let the CAO speak to that.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. The $500 fee is with respect to refreshment vehicles. There is a refreshment vehicle bylaw on the township books that for a $500 fee, if you are selling any kind of food or refreshments out of a very widely interpreted clause vehicle, there's a $500 annual fee. It would apply in the case of a food vendor, whether you go for one event or you're selling 365 days of the year. Councillor Oki raised this concern with me earlier today, and we were looking at it. Under the bylaw, under the refreshment vehicle bylaw, there is the discretion at council to make an exception or waive. It would not alleviate the need for all the inspections that still need to be done on behalf of the township and the public health unit. So there would be bylaw fire that would have to do their inspections of the setups. So we're looking at the issue right now, and perhaps we can come back with a recommendation when it's a food vendor that is going to be part of a special event in the township. So we'll give some alleviation to that. We'll propose something to alleviate the cost. The concern that we also have to balance here is that there are some food vendors that do buy the annual fee or the annual license at $500, and are we treating them fairly by giving breaks to other vendors who may not? We'll do some analysis on that and come back with something we're aware of it. Thank you, Councillor Oakley, for raising that with us, and we'll be back to address this with council.
Right. Okay. Go ahead, Councillor James.
Yeah, I take Councillor Oakey's point, Your Worship. I think that I know, working directly with the Turkey Fair people and the Canada Day people and the Sabara people on their specific applications, that some of the confusion is one is an events policy, and there's a whole other raft of existing measures that are kind of falling in this. So some of the conveners, the small organizations, are running into a confusion around what they need to think about and what a professional vendor would think about. The challenge with waiving fees for food trucks and so on and so forth is that you have permanent businesses operating and paying taxes, so that if we start to do some special things, we need to think about permanent businesses. In the case of Lyndhurst, you have 2 permanent food service businesses, or at least one summer and one's year round. So it's always that fine balance between letting things happen and ensuring that everybody's paying their way. But what I'm finding is, with the communication that I'm having and now helping fill out forms for 3 groups, is that they're really just getting over the shock of the new, and that's all it is. And we needed to do this because of just the challenges we had, and the derbies were famous for that. And the people in Sealy's Bay are being pretty quiet about the events policy because they know what it was like not to have one. So if we have one and we get through this first year, I think we'll be fine. And I would just like to thank Katie Forrester, Your Worship, for all the work that she's done to kind of smooth the waters and move us in the right direction.
Go
Thank
ahead,
you.
CAO.
Thank you, Worship. As we've been stressing right from the outset, township staff are here to help with the event organizers get their way through this. Acting Director Forrester worked with one event organizer, took 40 minutes, and they went through the process soup to nuts. And it was productive, and at the end, both parties got what they needed out of it. Director Forrester did do an information session that is a webcast. It's, I think, up on our website and available. Yes, there's another one is coming up on May 31st at 7 p.m. So and the details will be on our website for that.
I'll just add my 2 cents. I've received some feedback in regards to the process and the frustrations that people have taken with it. And I can appreciate the frustration because it is a new process, and it seems daunting and overwhelming at first. But the other thing that I'm reminded of is the fact that many of these events have happened for years, and we really haven't thought about safety plans for how to get ambulances or fire or anything through these very well-attended events, whether it be Lansdowne Fair or the Turkey Fair or Sealy's Bay Canoe Fest or the Canada Day celebrations. All of these things, when you have that many people there, thankfully there hasn't been anything major happen in recent memory. But I remember as a child having an ambulance come because somebody had been run over by a team of horses. And if you can't get an ambulance through a crowd of people or access, depending on what access point is, or better yet, if there's a parade going on and a road is blocked and there is a fire call, what happens? Because you try to scatter a parade, it's not always as efficient as what you might think. So these are the things that if people know about them ahead of time, and I realize that the organizers who have always been involved in these groups, one person would speak to the fire department, somebody would speak to OPP, somebody would call the township if they needed garbage cans or the parking or what have you. And it was all ad hoc. And the purpose of this is that if we can bring it all under one umbrella, we can make sure that things don't get missed. But the real thing is, once you get over this hump of the first year, there really is, it's just the same application again, year over year, with a different date on it, and perhaps some small changes depending on what the layout is or who's attending or the size of it or what have you. So, I do appreciate that it's painful the first go round, but Katie has been very generous to offer her time. I know that she hasn't been popular at some meetings, but we really are trying to be helpful, not a hindrance. Doesn't seem that way right now, but hopefully when we get to the next step of the application, it's all for good. So thank you, Katie. And thank you to the groups who've buckled down and to the groups that need the help. We're here. So any further announcements? Go ahead, Councillor Maybe, and then Councillor Jameson.
Thank you. And through you, Your worship. July 1st weekend, Gananoque is the Rib Fest, which supports the Lions Club and the Rotary Club, who do a lot of great events, not only in town of Gananoque, but also the township. And sometimes the Sealy's Bay Lions Club comes in and gives them a hand. And again, it's a fun event, but it's going to be held at the Gananoque Recreation Facility this year, not the Town Hall Park. So just pass that on as information. Thank you.
Excellent. Councillor Jameson.
Well, it's apropos of the discussion of events. Everybody's very excited, and that's part of the challenge. We just want to get on with it, but we don't want to fill out a form to get there. And then I get that. We all get that. It's been a long 2 years. So Small Halls is back in Sealy's Bay on the 28th and the 29th of May. Hurry and get your tickets because I think they're going fast for Hawksley Workmen and Sky Diggers. Also, the Canoe Fest is going to be Sunday morning. So there's a lot going on the 28th and the 29th. Canada Day is, Councillor maybe mentioned the Lions up in Sealy's Bay are beginning that process and getting together. And we're definitely going to have the fireworks. I'm assuming the forms will get filled out because I'm going to help. So I know they're going to get filled out. So the final thing, it went flying past, and if I may, we passed a whole bunch of staff reports, but I don't think we should let this meeting go because of how you had to start the meeting by not, again, looking at the performance of the financial fiscal performance of this township, finishing last year, the condition of our reserves or the state of our fiscal health, and the performance of our staff, basically dropping it on a dime, finishing the year phenomenally well. I read a lot of the baffle gab that came in after the last meeting, and most of it was simply baffle gab. But the bottom line is it's a figure, but the figure is not a reflection of the performance moving from 2019 to today. Has been an incredible trajectory of success, and we can't let that go just based on an earlier comment. The staff has done a tremendous job. We don't run on serendipity anymore. We're running on facts, and I really admired that here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further announcements? Seeing none, we'll go forward with number 11, bylaws, moved by Councillor Fody, seconded by Councillor Jameson, that 3 readings and final passage be granted to bylaws 22-001, 22-028, 22-029, 22-030, 22-031, 22-032, 22-033, and that 3 readings and final passage be granted to bylaw number 22-034, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the corporation of the Township of Lees and the Thousand Islands at its May 2nd, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting and the May 9th, 2022 Council meeting. Go ahead.
Through your worship, I wasn't, you were reading quickly. Did you defer the private roads grant policy, and did you amend the election sign bylaw?
So the election sign bylaw is amended based on the last motion, so that's fine, but the private, it should exclude the private road grant policy. Thank you.
Mhm.
So it should exclude the 22-028. Thank you for catching that. Okay, so the motion, so I need an amendment to exclude that. Councillor Gorell and then Councillor Olkey. (22-028). Okay, so the amendment's on the floor. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the amendment to exclude 22-028, sorry, 028, and that is carried. Go ahead, Councillor Gorell.
Then just a quick comment for the tax rate bylaw.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
was just through you, your worship, to the treasurer. Are there any changes in that ratio that you're aware of that would be significant to anybody? Or is it the same as previous years?
Through your worship, there's no changes that I'm aware of to the tax ratios that the county would set. I think it's all the same as previous years.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions in regards to the bylaws to be passed? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed, and it's carried. Last motion of the evening, moved by Counselor Jameson, seconded by Counselor Fode, that the council adjourn. All those in favor, please signify. All those opposed, carried, and meeting is adjourned.